Hi, and welcome to the November 29th meeting of the Council's Finance Committee. I'm calling it to order and announcing that you're being audio and video recorded. This is the second of two budget listening sessions that we've been hosting. And we have just one or two brief agenda items, and then we'll get to the listening. So let's see. Councilor Nash, perhaps you could call the roll.
I will do that.
You can be our lawyer.
Councilor Maori.
I am here.
Councilor Labarge.
Hopefully here.
Councilor Moulton.
Here.
And Councilor Nash, I am here. You have a quorum.
Yes, awesome. And we don't have minutes from the previous meeting, so we're going right into our budget listening session. I'm just going to just say a few things to couch what we're doing here. So I'm glad to see people here. And some of you may remember that we did hold a budget listening session last year. That was our first one. And I was saying yesterday that I think the entire committee, our finance committee, found it really fruitful, illuminating, and informative to hear this early on, and also hear aspirationally what's on the mind of our community. And I did, and I know others held those priorities with us through this entire the budget season. So the official, public budget
recording in progress
process does not start until January. And at that point, the mayor holds a joint meeting with the city council and school committee and gives us some broad strokes about how the city is faring financially. And then in April, there's the capital improvement part of the budget that's rolled out. And then in May, we get our big binder, and it's also available online, the publishing of the city's proposed budget with the mayor's budget message and a breakdown of expenditures by department. Soon after that, the council does hold 2 nights of public hearings on the budget. And then at the end of all that, the budget comes to council, and we for our approval, we discuss it, and it all culminates in June. So the idea behind holding a listening session now for the public is that we want to interrupt the trend of city government possibly not hearing what's on the mind of the community until much later in the city's process, when things have already been kind of written and framed. So we desire to have your priorities, your wishes, your ideas, and your concerns accompany us from the beginning before we even start the process. So thank you in advance for taking the time to be here. If you would like to make a comment or share an idea, we love ideas or concerns, please raise your virtual hand and I'll call on people in that order. We're looking to limit comments to 3 minutes, and our comments should be related to the budget or the budget process. And then we're going to track all the comments and kind of do a synopsis and send it to the mayor's office, and if it's relevant to the school committee and the superintendent. So that's what we're going to do with all that information. And also just want to thanks again to Finance Director Charlene Nardi, who is here for the second night. Thank you for being game. And she and council members, we may periodically respond, stop and respond to answer clarifying questions around about the budget process. But we're really not here to kind of debate. We really want to just listen. So without any further ado, let's get started. Let me see. So if you have anyone would like to talk, please raise your hand. We'd love to hear from you. Ideas, big ideas, little ideas, anything. We're up for it about the budget.
Could I interject something real quick?
Yes, please do.
This meeting is being audio and video recorded. You may have mentioned that at the start, Rachel. I hit the record button about a minute late. So just letting Our administrative assistant is stuck on a plane right now, and so we're winging this meeting without her. So
That's right. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Yes, we are doing that. And okay. I think I saw
did I scare him off?
no, Wendy stayed.
Oh no,
That's
it's
good.
hard
Let
to
me-
scare off Wendy. I know.
I know. That's what's so great. Okay. I got
Well, I was a little scared because I genuinely, first of all, thank you for doing this, both tonight and last night. And I generally like to wait till the end, till I've heard a number of speakers, to not repeat what's been said, nor or to have some other idea to build on. You know, we've talked about this. So any rate, I'm glad to see a couple members of the school committee here and some other folks as well. And you have a very good finance director, which makes me happy as a taxpayer, as a taxpayer in a clam. But at any rate, we're being recorded. So my basic comments, and this is why I wanted to hear people first, is I feel like the administration and the council have been very creative, very generous, very progressive and forward thinking in the kinds of directions a municipality can go in terms of helping people, both current and in the past, in terms of reparations and the community care department and, you know, all of that. I have concerns, and I just don't know because I'm not on the inside. We used a lot of federal one-time money for many things. And I feel like we really need to get, and I'm sure that's going on in the mayor's office, a real good grip on what the resources are, not just for the next year, but for several years. And I am concerned that we are straying from perhaps the sort of meat and potatoes of governmental operations and may not be able to cover those kinds of costs. I understand we have at least a couple dozen openings in the Department of Public Works. And, you know, if there's anything that's really meat and potatoes about local government, it's public works, probably public safety as well, and schools. And I'm sure I'm imagining the school committee members that are here will have something to say about that. My cursory knowledge of the school department is that it's underfunded, and we really do need to look at funding the school department. But whatever we do with funding, we need to be careful and thoughtful about it, not just throw money somewhere at something because we feel it's a problem. And I'm not saying that specific to the schools, but in general about all of these brand new and wonderful ideas that come up. So I say this as a former local government official and a taxpayer, that I never thought I'd come to the day where I'd say as a taxpayer, but as a taxpayer and a fee payer. I really would like us to look at the essential operations of government and make sure we have the monies there. We are also, I know through the health department, a regional provider. We are core central for many programs, and I'm proud of that. I think we all should be proud of that. But I think we need to, I know a lot of that's grant funded. So I just think the council needs to, not just the administration, look at where those funds that are one-time only, grant funded, federal monies, whatever, you know, how good are they? And and we want to retain these things, we have to think about that in terms of what our inflow is in terms of taxes, fees, economic development, whatever that is. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. And I really actually appreciate you raising your hand and starting us off. What I think sometimes helps other people raise their hands. And I appreciate your comments. Thank you, Wendy.
Yeah, thank you, Wendy.
Yeah. Nice. Okay, let's see. We have some people from last night. I'm just going to scan for hands. So there's a virtual hand, and then if you're having trouble with that,
Yeah.
I don't know if you can turn on your camera though. We have new settings, so.
Councilor Maori,
Yes.
I'm wondering if Director Nardi could speak to how the city is funding the DCC, because that was raised by Wendy, and that I think it's good for people to hear how we're currently funding the DCC and how we hope to continue funding the DCC.
Yeah, that that was going to be a big budget question I had in January too, and also CAPA, the new climate administration, and just another new entity. And I know people are curious about that. That would be great if the director could weigh in about that.
So I wasn't prepared to talk about this
Oh.
budget or about the DCC specifically or the DHHS. There is a lot of exciting and innovative stuff happening in that department. And yes, that a lot of the work is done through grant funding. There is a lot of grant funds out there for that work. So in speaking about using one-time funds, I will say I don't have the details of exactly what grants are funding the DCC. We do have a budget in the portion of the city's funds that budget, but a lot of it is grants that Commissioner O'Leary gets from, and they're multiple years. They're more than 2 years, some 3 year grants that are covering the cost. So I really can't speak to that specifically. That department has grown a lot since we set the budget. Just in her getting people on the ground and moving forward. So I would be uncomfortable unless I prepared to really talk about how that is funded and how it's moving forward.
Well, yeah, we'll just plan on bringing that up maybe in the either January, maybe the January meeting. But yeah, I'd like to better understand that, the Resilience Hub funding, just in terms of perspective, looking forward.
Yep, and I will take notes as well and make sure that the questions that I'm not able to answer, that we are able to answer at some point.
Okay, thank you, Director. Let's see. I think Colleen Curry, I believe that you're unmuted, but can you?
I think, can you hear me?
You are.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so actually I also had a question about, I don't even know what it's called anymore. Resilience Center, perhaps?
Yeah, the
Thing
Resilience.
for which the church was bought. I've had this thought for maybe a year or so that Manna saw the need and moved from doing daily meals to having a center where people drop in and get services, which is what I thought that the city was doing with the church. But I haven't heard recently about what's happening with that. I assume that is a grant as opposed to sort of part of our taxpayer budget. I assume it's grant funded more than less. So it may not be really a budget question, but it seems like it's duplicating efforts that are already being provided by a private agency. And I don't know if there's any work being done with Manna or any consideration of working with them rather than duplicating, even if it is grant and not coming out of taxpayers' money. Pause, period, question, period.
Yeah, okay. Thanks, Colleen. That's I'm thinking about that myself, and I don't want to misspeak, but so I don't know if the director wants to address any of that. You don't feel like you have to.
So certainly it's not because I don't wish to.
Right.
It's just because I wasn't prepared on this topic to discuss it in detail, and I certainly don't want to misspeak. I'm really not the expert of how all of those things are happening, and I'm not always on the ground floor of those discussions. So
Right.
I will defer to those who are more knowledgeable about the operations of those departments and that the future of the hub.
Yeah. I do know that Manna is being included in that. Oh, I think Councillor Moulton, I just lost you. Yes.
I'm here.
There you
I'm
go.
here. My understanding is that the efforts that have resulted in Manna expanding its mission are temporary, and were intended to fill in during the time that the Resilience Hub is being, well, the building is being readied and the hub is being established. And Manna will continue to be a partner with the city when that operation is fully functioning.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Colleen. Do you have anything else you want to say? You had a little more time if you wanted to, but
Um,
thank you for bringing that up.
I don't think I mean, there's a million things going through my head, like Wendy said, referring to myself as a taxpayer, and now an elder who's concerned about what do we say? Fixed incomes and high taxes and the water bill and yada yada yada. But it's not. I'm not panicked right now. I'm not panicked yet. But it's like I feel that there is fiscal responsibility in the city. I don't think that money is. I don't get the sense that money is seen as a never-ending resource, or that those of us who do fund it are never-ending. But I do have actually one more question. When is Public Works going to get a new building? Oh, Jim, I didn't mean you to laugh. Come on, it's not a joke. I've lived here since 1976, and I've wondered that I've had that question. When are they getting a new building?
Right.
We love them, right? We love them.
Yes.
They are essential to us, and they need a new building. When is it going to happen?
That's a $1 million question. I think literally.
Probably more than that. Probably more than that.
Yeah. I don't, again, I don't have anyone representing, but I did have a conversation with the director, the DPW director, when I first became a counselor a long time ago, 4 years ago. And I remember, and actually, no, Councilor Nash probably knows much more about this. But anyway, the concern was the cost of a centralized building, she told me at that time. And then, so there was a plan to kind of have decentralized, which would be less expensive buildings, like, there's some of them at Spring Grove. But I don't know much more than that part of it. I do know that I often get asked the question about the property that's adjacent to the transfer station that was state owned, and I check on that periodically, and the state is still having to clean that up, I believe, that property, because people say, and I understand why they would say, that's kind of an ideal place for the DPW to kind of expand structurally because it's right by the transfer station, but it's not. I guess it's still not in a condition where that's can be legally used that way. So anyway, that's all I know. I don't know if Councilor Nash or anyone else wants to, has any more thought on that.
Well, sure, I can take a stab.
Yeah,
That,
for a while.
Colleen, we definitely need a new building, and the physical plant needs to be modernized. We were out there. We got a tour, I guess it was about a year and a half ago, where we all got in a bus, and we got a tour of DPW, water treatment, and the water plant, and it was evident we need a new building, at a whole new facility at DPW. I would just say that in terms of being on the city's radar for as a priority, that there's been just so many other things that have been rising to the top, like the Department of Community Care, getting a resilience hub up and going, and there's actually something hopeful. I believe it was Representative Sabadosa was talking about. So there are initiatives with the state relative to help cities and towns fund school buildings, but to expand that type of programming to also include other infrastructure type of buildings that would allow cities and towns to address those needs as well. I would hope that a DPW facility would fall under that. I'm speaking with some imprecision here, but speaking with our state rep would be helpful. But it is I think having speaking with the mayor about this in terms of setting priorities around facilities and stuff, that would be in her purview. So I
I mean,
will.
I've heard that for how many administrations since 1976, that it's
Yeah,
not,
that makes sense.
it's not on the radar. It's not a priority. It should be a priority. Those people are working under conditions that are unhealthy and have been for years. And that means generations of DPW workers have been, I don't know why the city's not getting sued by them for what they've had to endure. I've heard the same thing for years and years and years. And the person who's probably heard it longer than any of us is Marianne Labarge, my counselor now, because I've moved into the ward again.
Oh,
Oh. Oh. And you know, and kind of relating this to what Wendy Foxman was saying earlier too, you know, we are concerned at council about the essentials of DPW because they do have a high vacancy rate. You know, and this is a time when there's climate change, when actually the job of the DPW is expanding and getting more complicated. So it is concerning. And we talk about that. I'm definitely going to check in at budget season again with Director Lascalia about that. You know, is it the wages we're offering, you know, the commercial licenses that you need to have the job are very specific, and are we not competitive enough? And it does kind of slow down that, coupled with, like, you know, now raw materials have gone up in cost. So I think, you know, we're slowing down a little bit with some of our our projects because of both the vacancy and the rising cost of materials. So I think we do need to really look at our bread and butter there. I didn't realize until I was on council, like DPW, that's like everything when you're a counselor, because so much of of what people reach out are about very specific issues around, things that the scope of the DPW is so huge. It's like a fallen limb or a pothole, or a million things that relate to to their department. So I hear that, and we have a great staff. So I hear what you're saying, Colleen. Thank you.
And because they are so essential on a daily basis to the city, I've always thought that their building, their work environment should be top of the list.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
I hear that.
Marianne.
Yeah.
Marianne has physically raised her hand.
That's a good point. I think,
Yes.
Marianne might you want to say something there, Counselor?
I sure do. Colleen, I agree with a lot that you're saying this evening. Knowing our director of the Department of Public Works and being a counselor as long as I have been, I have never, ever seen what has occurred at the Department of Public Works. As far as vacancies, it is extremely high. I just talked with Cindy Quinn, and we're still at 31 vacancies. What happened was, Colleen, 3 years ago, one of my residents is the assistant director at another city, had the same problem. We even went up on the salaries here in Northampton. They did also. They're having a hard time getting people to work. So right now, like when I talked with the director, she said, Marianne, if you know anybody who's got a pickup truck, and has got a plow, we need help with the side streets. The main streets, the big ones, she's not worried about, but it was a side street. So I had a resident that I had talked to in regards of giving her a call. So I don't know how he made out on that, but I have to say, as a director, she is doing everything in her power to help out emergencies right down the line. Potholes. I have never seen so many potholes in Ward 6. I mean, there's not enough of help to get out there. And if there's emergencies, they got to go to the emergencies. I've just never seen it critical like this. And I feel bad for the workers right now because they're out there and they're understaffed. Yep. A lot of concerns you brought up tonight. Same with Wendy Foxman. I've been hearing it. Definitely. Yeah. About our money and so forth in the city. What are the priorities here in the city? Even at the wake and at the funeral I had today for a loved member of our family. And it was like, again, talking about it after. It's just, I don't know. There's a lot of questions here in finance. And I think once that we started up in January, we're going to really be able to see the figures here. And we have an excellent financial director, Chardine. And I'm very worried about the direction that we're going in.
Well, thank you very much, Colleen. I appreciate you giving us a lot to think about, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Colleen.
See, look, you've Colleen inspired others. Let's see. We've got Meg and Wendy. Let's Meg, I'm going to unmute you. Or no, actually I can't. Jim, I'm not the host, so you. Oh, she
let me
might
make
already.
you
I
a
think she's
host.
unmuted. I think she's unmuted.
Think I'm on. I'm very
Yeah,
seldom,
there
very
you go.
seldom, Rachel.
Hey, Meg.
Good.
And I just want to say that I have a truck. If you get me a plow, I will do some sites.
I'll help you with it, Meg.
It might get down to that.
Love that, Marianne. We will jump in there and we will take care of clearing up those
You
streets.
got it. And we'll get Susan Voss with us too.
All right, we're gonna go.
Oh, Meg, you know what? I've neglected asking people.
Yes, where I'm
said-
from. Yes.
And also, I wanted to point out that you are, yeah.
I am not here as a school committee member.
Right.
It even
I know, I
says
know.
that on my thing. I don't know how to change it.
That's okay.
But yes, I live on Aldrich Street in Northampton, and I've lived here for a few years longer than Colleen, which makes me feel both like a taxpayer and an elder. But I do want to talk about the schools, big surprise. And I listened last night and I thought that Andrea Gito pretty much said it all. She was amazing and she put it out there. That's the piece that I guess I would like you guys to really think about. And part of that is the impossibility of starting this next year's budget without the allocation that we received from the city last year, because it puts us right back, not only where we were, but even in a worse place. And the idea that we, after this pandemic, can lay off more staff and ever expect to be able to recover that is just a daydream. We lost staff through the pandemic. We have lost a great number of senior teachers in our district. They've gone elsewhere or they've left the profession. And our junior teachers are trying as hard as they can, but if someone offers them a better wage in another district, they go. So hanging on to the staff that we have, that we spend time paying for professional development, that have experience in our schools, know our children, know how we work, and are invested in them, is really critical. And playing with that as though it's expendable, to me, is the same as saying, these are essential workers, as just like DPW and just like our fire staff and just like our police staff, and retaining this staff is incredibly important. And I know that it's thinking about it through the lens of how much money do we have and how do we allocate that. But my plea is to start the foundation budget, including the $1.3 million. And I do remember, and you can catch me if I'm wrong, but I think a few years ago, the mayor allocated money from capital improvements to pay for, I think it was math curriculum in the city schools, which was a surprise to me because I didn't know that could happen. And I was thinking about this the other day. So this is my big idea. And my other big idea is to think about how I have three of them. So my big idea, number one, is we have, I think, $16 million that have been allocated for capital improvements to schools over the next 5 years. But we've done it. I don't think that it came before the school committee at all. It was a capital improvements decision, kind of a surprise. Probably went to stuff that's important, that needs to happen. But we are going to start in the district a strategic planning session that's going to take a year. And it's going to be the whole community weighing in on what's important. And my guess is that a big part of that is going to be around thinking about declining enrollment, thinking about green schools, thinking about what needs retrofitting, and possibly not retrofitting all our buildings, thinking about giving declining enrollment, what would be the best use of our city resources in terms of the fewer children that we have? So going ahead and making repairs to all of our city schools as though they're all going to be operating in 5 years might be a good idea, but are those the repairs we want to make given what our goals are overall? And when we talk about funding and the allocation of grants for green schools, it's huge. And that ought to be something that we're looking at. I love that we have a new climate chief, and I'm hoping that they will want to be working with us on that. So thinking about possibly reallocating some of the capital improvement funds to be able to make that happen. And more immediately, as Andrea addressing cooling systems in the school, even if they're ones that give us at least cooling centers for children and staff to be in. When we talk about working conditions, the working conditions for children and for teachers and for staff when on a hot day is unbearable. And we know we're going to hit that again. We know we're going to hit it sooner and we're going to hit it longer. And then the other piece of it that I wondered from last night's conversation when Charlene talked about how the silos are created for the fiscal sustainability plans, which I know we've talked about it before, but so we have, I know there are 4 of them now, right? I don't know, somebody help me with naming them off because my brain has gone in that direction, but we don't have schools. So we're not actually putting revenue into any kind of a silo that is protected for school expenses. And we talked about it being on the school side, that's something we can do, but schools don't get revenue. All we do is spend money. We're really good at that, but surely on the city side, that's something when we are looking at free cash or looking at unassigned monies, that should be a priority for us, along with all the other things that are important to us, so that we don't, maybe that's one way we can head off suddenly finding ourselves, cash strapped when it comes to it. And a reminder to us that in 2017, we did decide as a city to make a very expensive change in supporting all of our children in inclusive classrooms. And we knew it wasn't going to be paid for. We knew it was going to be a lot of money. We didn't get reimbursed by the state. I don't think we even expected to be at any kind of rate that was there. We did it for the kids. And that is catching up to us. We spent a lot of money. We hired a lot of staff. There was a lot of talk at the time about laying off staff to hire more staff. It was sort of like a switcheroo thing, which you can't do with people's lives. When they come into the system, they need to know they have a job and that they're committed and that we expect them to be with us. But it's an ongoing concern for the school district. But it was one that was approved by the city council and it was approved by the mayor, and we are all in the same boat with it. So we need to be on the same page now and thinking about, we spent down the monies that financed that for several years. It was taken out of the school choice budget, and that sent us into the red. And now we paid soft money to hire staff, and now we're struggling with that. But fundamentally, my final thought for tonight is just to remind you that long-term changes by the state are long-term, and short-term fundamental funding of our schools is about the kids who are our responsibility, who will someday be taxpayers and snowplow drivers and elders. But we need to remember that they are our charge and our responsibility. And we can't just say to them, sorry, guys, can't do it this year. We just had a letter from a parent saying, why don't we teach instrumental instruments in our schools? We used to. Those of us who had kids in schools remember that. It makes a good education. People moved here for that. We need to think more holistically. So my plea is, let's retain the $1.3 million. There might be some different avenues into making that happen. We may still have to look at increasing the 4% allocation on top of that, because that just got out of a hole. We still have funding issues that are in front of us. And I'm so appreciative of your listening sessions for us. And I hope that is a practice that continues with the school committee on a regular basis. And so congratulations to all of you, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Meg. I feel like I learned so much from this. And just to clarify, because we did talk about it last night, and the director can chime in again, but yeah, we were talking about the stabilization funds, and the director reminded us that those are for one time, because it's not a guaranteed amount. it's not that they couldn't be related to education, but we would have to think of it as, not reoccurring, expenses, since the stabilization funds have, are not a guaranteed amount. That makes sense. So like the climate mitigation one we just added, these are things for one-time expenses and not for ongoing, like things like salaries. So just to keep that in mind. But thank you for that. That was very illuminating. Okay. Yeah. And had some good school conversations. Let's see. Oh, here, Wendy.
Again.
Since there's no one has their hand up, I'm just gonna have Wendy. Let me see if you're.
Yeah, again, and
That's right.
I have question just for clarification. I don't think you said this, Rachel, at the beginning, but if you did, I'm sorry, I missed it. Is it accurate to say that the budget can be cut, but nothing, you cannot add to the budget once the mayor's budget arrives? Is that correct or incorrect?
That's correct.
That is correct.
Okay, and so I think that's an important thing people need to know.
Yeah, that's true.
And I think it would be useful to talk about how you work prior to the budget getting submitted so that the council's voices are heard by the administration. I'm not aware of how that works. I was just sort of curious. So that you can take from tonight and last night, for instance, or whatever avenues you all have for hearing from the public, as well as I'm hoping you're hearing from city workers, both department heads and workers, about what's going on in their department. So how do you interact with the administration over budget creation? It's really a question.
Right. Thank you, Wendy. And right, I've been formulating a kind of a description of the budget season, and I appreciate that because I hadn't put in that, in that clarifying what council does, because there's actually a lot of, I think there's a lot of misperception around that. And I think it's because, I think cities really vary, and there might be councils, or like on Parks and Rec and Leslie Knope, where they get to allocate funds for, but our council cannot, and that we can cut the budget and we can make alternative proposals, but we cannot allocate funds. And so that is the reality. But did you have, so Wendy, is there more of that question or something there for the director? So yeah, so we can, we can certainly cut or not approve of the budget. But unless we make a kind of alternative proposal back to the mayor, that is, the mayor basically will get their budget. So we can't, even the way that we cut the budget is limited. That makes sense.
Yeah, and so the other part of my question was, how do you work with the administration on creating that budget ahead of time? Because that's not been a transparent process in the past, or if it has, my eyes were closed. So just wondering how the council has worked with the administration, getting input into the administration.
Right, that was the second, and I bet Councillor Nash has something to say, but I will say that part of this kind of budget listening session, this is a little thing, was conversations on the finance committee about feeling kind of like residents, and that, we're it's, kind of we're bringing in to edit something like the big binder, but, we'd rather, it becomes a little more polarizing then. Like, it would be nicer to kind of have those conversations earlier, so they're not so invested in. Anyway, Councillor Nash, I'll let you talk.
Thank you, Rachel.
Yeah.
So I'll say from the conversations that occurred at the last year's listening sessions that that it was evident that that the residents who spoke in this meeting were concerned about climate, and they were concerned about the school budget. And the budget that the mayor brought forward reflected those ideas. I don't want to say that it was this meeting that resulted in those things. I know the mayor was already working on the CAPA plan for the new department, but it it did give her resolve in moving forward on that decision to hear that kind of support. Also, in terms of, making the difficult decision last year to pull money out of the fiscal stability plan early to support the schools, that also, I think, hearing, residents' voice, their desire to hear our schools funded, helped with making that decision as well. So there's this venue. There's also that we as counselors will we listen to constituents, and we have time with the mayor to advocate for the things that we see are important, and that that I have advocated for, with the mayor for, funding the schools, for building roads in particular, for a whole host of different projects. One successful advocacy in last year's budget was Alex getting the mayor, working with the mayor to double the amount of money that we're setting aside for sidewalks as part of the capital improvement plan. So that's the kind of advocacy that can go on. And I think by having this conversation this early in the process, it kind of gets us on the same page as to what the actual discussion about what is we want to see in June when council is voting on this. And that and that's the important piece about it, listening early, because we can advocate for it, and when it's there, we can when we voted on that budget last year, we were seeing many of the things that we heard in the meeting the year prior, and it makes for an easier vote. So that's all I got.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Wendy. And yeah, I'm still thinking about what you said. I'll follow up, because I think there are ways in which the process could be more transparent, and it's figuring out what those are. But thank you. I see Michael Stein. Welcome, Michael. Okay. I lost.
What happened to him?
And I thought the boxes moved, and I thought I had accidentally kicked out Michael. Michael, would you just state your city or your address?
Yeah, sure. I am a resident of Northampton. Live at 14 Columbus Ave in Ward 4. I am currently a school committee member representing Ward 4, and serve on the budget and property subcommittee of the school committee. And I'm really grateful that you guys are holding these listening sessions. It makes me want to do something similar on the school committee side, frankly, to get some input. And I apologize, I haven't heard what everyone has said, so this may repeat what others have said. I just wanted to share a few things about the process on our side that might be helpful for you to understand, and sort of the direction that the superintendent has been given. It was wonderful last year that we avoided making some pretty significant cuts to the district as a result of what's called the fiscal cliff. I'm happy to talk with any counselors about what actually that is. The short story is that for many years, regular operational costs, largely tied to staffing needs that we have, was paid out of non-operational dollars we got from the city. And eventually we spent that checkbook down into the negative. And so that was the bailout last year. Unfortunately, this year, the mayor has tasked the superintendent with cutting $1.2 million from the budget. And the process, the way it works on our side, and I don't know if this is just practice or supported by the charter or any policies, but the mayor apparently gave this direction to the superintendent. The alt team, so the leadership of the district, the principals, are working right now to try to make these cuts. And then the entire school committee will be presented a budget based on this austerity on December 16th. And then we will see some presentation. I see it here listed as the state of the city address, which will include a proposed budget. It's not a great process from my perspective, and these cuts are going to be really damaging to the school system. We're, for many years, have really underfunded the schools. We've had some of the lowest paid staff and teachers in the state for many years. We had to claw and fight for that 3% raises recently, and we are at a competitive disadvantage, which is troubling. We don't have any money for curriculum. We don't have any money for really many extracurriculars whatsoever or enrichment programs. It's very bare bones, and the type of cuts that are being talked about are really startling to me. So I just want to sort of let you guys know from my perspective what I'm concerned about, and that the table is being set in such a way through the existing process that we are starting from a position of being asked to make very large cuts. I hope that we'll have more opportunities to engage with the city council. I know we have that one joint meeting, but that's more a presentation to us than a opportunity for us to talk together. But from my perspective, the sort of underinvestment in the schools historically that created the fiscal cliff needs to be addressed, and we have to figure out a different model to make us more competitive and look like the districts that the city compares to. So thanks so much for listening. Really appreciate you holding this. And if anyone wants to talk more, feel free to reach out.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Michael.
Thank you.
And I'm kind of doing a straw poll. So it, you said some new stuff, but even if things are said again, it's good to know. And, it's good to know that a lot of people kind of are saying the same thing. So thanks, Michael. Right. You scan for hands. Anyone inspired to, a lot of folks have talked.
Yeah.
See. Oh, I think Colleen, are you raising your hand again? I can't tell.
Yeah, I
Oh.
am.
Okay,
I mean,
well, since there's no one else, why don't you go ahead?
okay. Well, that was very disturbing what Michael just said. Like it's already done with the school committee. I mean, like the school budget is done. The mayor has set an amount, and that's it. I don't understand what that was about. I mean,
Right, I believe, to clarify, I believe, we're all this, we haven't approved the budget for fiscal 2025 yet, but I think what, Michael was saying is that, that's the starting point for going into the budget, process. But if Michael's still here, we could ask him.
He's still here.
I mean, it sounds like the mayor has set set an amount. That's it. You can't add to it once it comes to you.
Right.
The advocacy has to happen now to get more for the schools to make it sufficient to not have what happened. Who was saying? I forgot the other. No,
Michael
the other.
Stein? No. Oh, Meg Robbins.
Yes.
Yeah.
What she was saying about losing staff, and not being able to get them back, and we've seen that happen. There has to be advocacy before the mayor decides that this is the amount that the school can have. It just makes it sound like it's a done deal. Work with it. Too bad. Lose teachers. Oh well. There has to be advocacy before some number is sent to the school committee. It's just the beginning of December coming up, and the budget process hasn't even really started. I mean, maybe it's always an ongoing thing, but that just doesn't make any sense to me. That sounds like it's done. We're going to lose staff. Schools will suffer. And we hear this every single year, as Michael said, constantly underfunded. So where's the
Yeah.
advocacy to get more money for the schools?
Since Michael, would you mind just making sure I clarified that or adding to that clarification? I mean, because
Sure,
I know
yeah.
things can change along the way, but it's true that it's not the council who's going to be adding money, you know.
Yeah, so typically as I understand the process, right? And I haven't really seen in the charter or in the other policies this laid out in the way it actually happens. But it seems as if the mayor gives a number to all department heads and asks them to make cuts, and then she forms a budget. And she treats the Northampton Public Schools, I don't know what happens with Smith Voc, but she treats Northampton Public Schools just like another division, even though we have an elected governing board. And so even though I'm a member of the Budget and Property Subcommittee, I found out about these cuts that are being asked to be made, on an Excel sheet, and we don't actually have a conversation about it before it comes to the entire school committee on December 16th. So all the leadership within the schools are finding out how they're going to get cut to this number. And then we will be presented a budget of what those cuts are going to look like on December 16th. A version of that will then be presented to both the city council and the school committee in January. And that's called sort of I think they call it here at least it's like a state of the city. My reading of the charter says it's supposed to be an update to the city council and the school committee on the financial health of the city, not necessarily the presentation of a budget, but we can split hairs on that. But essentially, yeah, there's a decision being made at a level and directed to our chief executive, who reports to the school committee, that this is what your budget number is. Make a budget that conforms to that. And in this case, that means cutting $1.2 million, actually a little more, right? So then we're going to go through an entire spring session with a number of meetings where we're going to all, in the school committee, make really painful choices about, are we going to cut this thing that we really need? Or are we going to cut that thing that we really need? And people are going to advocate various things. Most of the time, historically, it ends up being what we get. What it will look like will depend on what recommendations we get, but the cuts will be the cuts. The only time historically that I'm aware of that has been different was when we voted to approve the extra $250 to give the 3% raises and some of the additional dollar wages to our lowest paid workers. So that's the structure. I'm not sure where this exact framework is actually laid out in policy documents or in the charter, but that seems to be the practice for many years. So yeah, I mean, this is where we're at. We're being told this is the cut. Well, they're preparing a budget based on this cut. We'll get a presentation, then we will jointly get a presentation, and then the rest of the process based on the state mandated times in which we're supposed to prepare a balanced budget will play out. And yeah, that's what's going to happen from my understanding. Yeah.
Can we ask Director Nardi? Can we ask Director Nardi to weigh in and with whatever context she'd like to offer for the process?
So I will say that as part of the fiscal stability, we put in there, that's in the budget from last year and every year before that, it shows a percentage for departments. That is the number that schools are given. So 4% has been what the mayor has stated for NPS and Smith Vocational Schools. As far as the January presentation, it is a state of the finances. It is not a budget at all. We are not stating budget amounts in that presentation. So the process does begin in January. As of last year, the mayor did offer the $1.2 million. It was clear if you read her budget message about that there was a one-time payment or one-time addition to the school's budget with the idea and the agreement that there would be cuts through attrition in FY 2024 with cuts in FY 2025 as well. there was that understanding. So it's not just the mayor coming forward and taking away money as it was unexpected. And I think a lot of the challenges that Northampton is facing with their school budget, it's not, it's common to many of the school systems in Massachusetts. So our process is starts in the fall for the schools because they start moving forward and project their budget forward. I will say, you know, there's challenges because of a lot of different things that occurred. One of them is negotiations for the percentage, and I think it is higher than 3%, those negotiations. So all of those things and several others put us where we are today. But the budget process is not occurring, and the mayor has not set down her foot and said this is what it is, but she has given guidance, because that's how you create a budget, is you need to know what your revenues are. And just as a reminder, the city is only allowed to raise its tax levy by 2.5%. So as we talk about we should just increase percentages or spend money, as you noted, we have lots of important tasks that the city provides to its residents: DPW, public safety, schools, and schools are a priority. And I think the city has been, at least by my viewing of the budgets, made them a priority. But we also have to look at the larger picture where all this money goes. And we do have limited finances. We don't have money where we can just put it where, you know, we don't have endless pots of money, because that hits taxpayers. So all of these are taken into consideration. And we will start the budget process. I know the schools are working on their portion. I'm starting to look at the fiscal stability plan and what our revenues look like for the next 5 years. So we can talk about that at the January meeting, or the mayor, excuse me, not me, but the mayor can talk about that.
Oh, thank you, Director. Let's see, Michael, did you have a, let's see, I don't see any other hands, so I'm gonna.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry. Oh man, sorry. I have this, like, I need to get a new mouse.
thanks. Yeah, no, can you hear me now? No, I just wanted to respond a little bit and say, yes, there is this fiscal stability plan framework that's been in place for a while with this 4% increase talk. But there's also sort of planned overrides that also haven't happened as part of that fiscal planning structure. Or I'm sorry, the fiscal stability structure. And in the case what we're talking about here, like was said, it was supposed to be over 2 years, but we're taking the entire hit this 1 year, $1.2 million this year. It's not spread out over FY24 and FY25. And the reason we had that deficit is because a lot of positions required to meet the needs of the district were not built into budgets for an 8 or 9 year period, and were funded by a revolving school choice account that had a large balance. So essentially, for many years, we never moved those positions to the operational budget. And now all of a sudden we've run out of money in that account and we have to move them in. And we did last year, but now we're just gonna cut all that money now. Like it's just not a sustainable way to operate the school. So when I say underfunding, I mean, we never built that into the operation budget. And so 4%, we're getting a 4% increase minus the 1.2 million shortfall. So we're netting out at probably 80 or 90,000 less than we got last year. So yeah, is it a 40% increase over what our initial allocation was? Sure. But we're at a deficit and we're being asked to cut 1.2 million. So I just think, you know, it's fine that that's the guidance and people love the 4% number, and there's a long adoption of this fiscal stability plan, but there were other assumptions about that plan, including overrides that haven't happened, rightfully so, because of the pandemic and other things. But when we change inputs, we gotta look at things. And if we're gonna add a bunch of new programs, new departments, new centers, and not meet the basic needs of the schools, I think we have to ask some tough questions. And that's what I'm asking the council to do as we go through the process. Yeah, I hope that's helpful. I know it's super complicated. I've spent way too much time with these numbers trying to understand the problem. Yeah, it's frustrating.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Michael, for the clarification. And for spending all that time, in service to our community and schools. Looking at before I forget, I just wanted, there was a clarification that was about the money for the increase. Let's see, traffic calming was doubled, and there was an increase of money to the sidewalks, but traffic calming was the thing that was doubled. I was told. So I just wanted to share that before I forgot. But yeah. A lot to think about. Is there anyone else who wanted to make a comment? I'm It does seem like the school, schools could benefit from a kind of listening session. I'd say the majority. Last year there was definitely a representation from folks concerned about the school budget, but this year it's been, I can just feel that it's been overwhelming majority of our comments have been related, not all, but to the school budget. So, and I probably should have said in the beginning too, council, we don't vote on line items in the school. That's why we have a school committee to make those decisions. But we do, our relationship to the school is approving, the overall budget. So we do need to be in the loop. Council does, about what's going on in the schools, even if we're not, not doing the nitty gritty work of the line items and all that, or poring over the numbers the same way. Okay, well, I just want to make sure I'm not missing anyone. All right, it's been a very lively discussion. Counselors, does anyone have anything they want to add? I look, no pressure. See, Counselor, did I mute you? No. Okay, good.
I have a comment.
Yes.
So I just want to push back against the idea that the city is deliberately underfunding the schools. I'm looking at my budget books here. The first one that I voted on back in 2017, the school budget was $28 million. The one we approved last year was 38 million, give or take a few $100,000. Last year's budget had a 7.4% increase in it. That included Charlene, did that include the 1.2 million? So, and we approved that with the idea that we were dipping into our fiscal stability funds. We knew that the school committee was operating with a temporary superintendent, with a new superintendent coming in, and that with the hope that we were buying the school department some time with that 1.2 million. Without the 1.2 million, I believe we're still looking at an over 4% increase in that budget. And that during my time on council, we have seen, roughly 3 to 4% increases for the school department every year. And that, yes, I know that salaries are going up and that we need to support our teachers, and that I just want to push back against that idea that we are thinking negative thoughts about funding our schools, that in terms of city dollars, that it's the biggest department in the city, and that every budget that I've been part of has made the point of valuing our schools with those budget decisions. So the other thing is I also want to say that I'm concerned about the ideas expressed about going after the various stability funds that we have established over the years. That those are the, you know, the city is not allowed to have a credit card or run a debt, and the way that we plan for emergencies, like when we had the pandemic, thank goodness we had that general stability fund that allowed us to make decisions on the fly as you know, as we were shutting down like the senior services and then increasing our health department. We had the ability to do that, you know, in real time. That there are times where, you know, where we have we've seen it in over the last year. We've seen things like at the Academy of Music fail. We've seen capital needs that we've needed to address, that we've had those funds to be able to pull out that and be able to address those needs. I really worry about ideas of where we would start fishing into those monies in order to fund our schools. And so I sympathize with the folks on the school department side and with school committee, but that I don't think that undermining the things we have in place that keep our city financially stable are a good way to go. Meg earlier mentioned something about pulling out monies from capital improvements that may have been to buy technology, or something like that, but we can't go and do that for salaries. And that also the CAPA department, a big part of that is going to be for rebuilding our schools to address all of those needs that people are talking about: air conditioning, greener systems, all of that is going to fall under CAPA. And so, and that's one of those stability funds.
Mhm.
So I sympathize with the tough decisions that are going on, but I just want to say that, you know, that the city cares about schools, and I've seen it in every budget that I've been part of. So thanks.
Thank you, Counselor. Yeah, I look forward to our joint meeting. I think I always really enjoy that, and I think it's very fruitful. Let's see, we're getting a little late. I see Meg. The only hand I see is Meg. I've let other folks talk again, so I'm gonna do that, and then maybe, and we'll see. But we'll probably, yeah, start wrapping up. Hope I didn't. No.
He's there.
Oh, she is? I have this thing with my technology that makes it difficult to. Did I lose her? Oh, there she is, but she's not unmuted. Hold on.
I got it.
Oh,
Rachel.
thank you. Thank you. I clearly need to get, yeah.
Yes, you do. Need a new mouse, and I have one. You can have it.
Thank you.
I think that these listening sessions are incredibly important. And from what I heard you say at the beginning, it's to start thinking about exactly what Jim was saying was, so how have we done what we've done? Are there ways that we can do it differently? And how do we put our heads together to find new ways to deal with what, some of which are old problems, some of our new problems, and the world has really changed. And I think this is the way to be able to work through all of that, to consider what our revenues are and what our responsibilities are. And certainly you can understand the advocacy that we have for the children in the district, because every year in the schools counts for them. We can't just say to them, we can't do that this year. And that's what drives that kind of passion. And Jim, I love your passion. I'm really going to miss it on the city council, because it goes back a long way and it matters. And caring about that and being able to figure it out But maybe we do need to be open to thinking about not hanging on to the way that we do things now and considering what might be some very different ways of accessing and using the revenues that we have in a way that will better support all of the systems that are under our purview. So thank you so much for this evening. And I am actually going to go stop my wood stove from smoking.
Thank you, Meg.
Hi, Meg.
I appreciate that. Both things, that you're going to stop your wood stove and your comments. Okay. Wow. Definitely feel like I'm learning a lot tonight too. So, all right. Let's see, 7:11. I'm just going to wait a couple minutes to make sure that since we said we would be here, I just want to wait just a couple minutes, but if there's no new hands, then we can start wrapping up. Okay, I don't see any new hands or anyone in the waiting room. Counselors, are you comfortable with that if we start wrapping up? Anyone
Yep,
have
I'm
anything else they want to
comfortable
add?
with it. I thought it was very interesting this evening.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm going to add that December 16th meeting to my recap to my constituents about it's not a council thing, but it is important. And because so many questions revolve around the school budget, I think I should probably include the schools process as
think
well.
so.
Yeah,
Definitely.
not just what council when we start later.
I also think that we've heard some really good things coming from Wendy, coming from Meg, of the directions that we probably should be looking at. And I think with Michael Stein also, and also Colleen, you know, this is what we want to hear. We want to hear from the public. And I was really hoping that we would have heard from a lot of the taxpayers. I'm very surprised that, again, for 2 nights now, we're hearing about the schools, which is okay. But I don't know how we're going to reach out to the public, Councilor Mary.
Yeah, I think it was great. I think it's good to try new things and maybe we'll think of some other creative and more proactive ideas about reaching people. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But it was excellent hearing the difference about schools and so
forth. Right. And we can take the questions that were brought up tonight and then we can keep posing them, during the public budget hearings.
I like the idea with Meg coming out and saying maybe we should start looking in a different way. Sometimes, yes, changes need to be made. And going in a different way and everybody working together on that, I think that's an excellent idea. And Nash, he came out with the facts because I got all my budget books from the time that I started as a counselor, the 28 million right down the line. Thank you for doing that, Counselor.
Yeah, we're old school hard copy people. I have my too. I want to make sure to thank again before anyone leaves. Thanks to the people who joined us tonight.
Yeah,
I really appreciate you taking the time. There's a lot of meetings. I appreciate that. And again, thank you to the director who, this is above and beyond. So thank you.
Thank you, Shirley.
I'm ready. No new hands. So, if anyone wanted to entertain a motion, we can go there. But I just want to make sure we said thank you.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Okay.
God, I can't believe my Zooming stayed on.
Yeah, there you go.
Thank goodness.
All right. Jim's going to be Laura for a minute.
Yeah. So for adjourning, Councilor Maori.
Yes.
Councilor Labarge.
Yes.
Councilor Moulton.
Yes.
Councilor Nash. I vote yes. We are adjourned.
Good night.
Good night, Colleen. I see Colleen still there. Well,
Thanks.
Yeah, and thanks for doing this.
Colleen.
Oh,
It's a daunting process.